From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy-watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hi, tonight we're talking about Snowpiercer. It's a 2013 film and it's based on a story where in the future, failed climate change experiment has killed off all life except for a few lucky little buggers that have hopped on this super fast, supercharged train that manages to circle the globe non-stop for the last 18 or so years. And of course, the train has created a new class system for humanity.
Quite literally, it's the classes of passenger.
It is.
Yeah.
It is actually. You're right.
It really is a class system without any hesitation to use the term.
Totally. And I mean, look, hey, trains, it's like dating back, isn't it, to the concept of class, really. Trains are that perfect example of rich people at the front, poor people at the tail, and middle class in the middle somewhere, right?
Somewhere. So anyway, this is your spoiler warning. If you've not seen this film, go back and watch it because it's really well worth it. And then join us now. So,
what was your number one takeaway from Snowpiercer, sorry?
My number one takeaway was that babies taste best.
What?
It's true. That or cockroaches are preferable to cutting your own limbs off.
Yeah, I would probably go that. I would eat cockroaches.
I think it's sort of an insight into the levels of desperation that can be heightened when you boil humanity down from this big global population down into a train.
Yeah, and look, in Australia right now, you saw people are fighting over toilet paper. That's what happens when people get cornered and panic and don't really get their rational brains out. They bring out some irrational little lizard brain and they're like, mine. So Snowpiercer works off that, works off the concept that humans, when they're like cornered and put into a little segment and you've got nothing else to live on, you're going to chew someone else's arm off, aren't you? You're going to just brutally do that if that means you live and they don't.
Yes, that's when I would do it.
Yeah, but I wouldn't do it over toilet paper. But, you know, like in this scenario, it's very similar. And it just shows you how quickly humanity can fold upon itself.
It is interesting because you sort of think that, you know, devolving down to cannibalism and...
Yeah, being lizards, really. Come on.
This sort of really primal thing is a long way off. But I don't think that it is.
No.
And I think that's what I'm getting a bit from Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
Is that the distance between, you know, dining on sushi and getting celebration eggs at New Year's, all the way down to eating gelatinous blocks of bug protein. I like to think specifically cockroach protein.
Oh yeah, crunchy.
Is not that far.
No.
And
but the thing is with that, they didn't know they were eating that.
No, but
if you didn't know, you would eat it because you had nothing else to eat. And then secondly, like even when you learned that's what you're eating, sure, it might make you want to like barf in your mouth a little bit, but I mean, if you got nothing else to eat, I just eat it.
It's that or people.
Yeah, and it is protein. I mean, it's protein.
Well,
bugs are protein. Like,
perfectly fine to like eat, really.
And you could even argue in this, well, they've been treated and they're put into little jelly block things, little rubber. They were really tangible, weren't they, in the movie? How they made them kind of like
they glistened.
they glistened, and you could like whack them. You know, they didn't just fall apart. You know, we have so many products these days that like just crumble, but that like it was like a solid thing that you could whack. You know,
yeah, you got a real feeling of what it would.
It would be
feel
chewy.
like,
yeah, it'd be chewy.
But anyway, so I guess the thing is this then a story of hope, warning, or is it an experiment?
Look, I think completely it's a warning. This film, to me, this story really relates to 1984 by George Orwell. Orwell. George Orwell wrote 1984. If you haven't read it, please read it. You need to keep up with this. Yeah, read that book.
If you think you know what 1984 is about, because I did before I read it.
Yeah.
Because people always talk about Big Brother and all that.
They do.
Turns out you probably don't know at all what it's about, and you will be... I think it's a horror book.
It kind of is, it is.
Scarier than
it's
any
horror and sci-fi.
Any sort of, like Stephen King or Dean Koontz or whatever that I've read.
But you make a good point. I was the same. I thought I knew what 1984 was about. And when I started reading, I was like, yeah, I get what this is about. But then you get into the bowels of the book and it suddenly takes a weird side turn. I saw a beautiful punk rock woman the other day on the train reading it. You know, she's an office worker, but looks like a punk rocker. And I thought, good for you. She was about 3/4 of the way through the book. So I knew exactly where roughly she was getting to.
She's getting up to the pretty bad parts.
And when you're at that point, even in public transport, you kind of really just suddenly are in the world that he creates, and you're off on some weird, beautiful tangent that George Orwell takes you on. And this movie, I think, is actually quite similar because it has the classes, it has the abstract violence, it has the horror, and it takes us to another world. So
social engineering.
It does. The social engineering is a major part of it.
I think that's what horrifies me about 1984. Yeah. And when Curtis gets to the train engineer.
Yes. Yeah. We
Wilfred,
really. Yeah.
And this engineering is revealed that he's treating humanity like a train engine.
He is. Yeah.
A perpetual engine is what he's got in his train, and that's how he's treating humanity. He even talks about them as units.
Yeah.
And they talk about how many units, 74 units.
74%, is there. Yeah.
74% of the units we have to delete. And that was I can definitely see that 1984 connection there where there's that view of the dispassionate view of humanity as a machine to be orchestrated.
And we see this again. And so to circle back to the question like hope, experiment, warning, and please correct me, hit us up if you think it's something else. But like, I really see this as a warning because ultimately you can't box humanity in, and this film is literally, this story is boxing humanity into the tail end of the train and then the subsections. So you got all the different classes. But at the end of the day, what happens is, and again, we've given you the warning, you've basically got to break free of those shackles. Like, it doesn't work. The class structure like that doesn't work when it's to the extremity that it is on this train. And you're right, Wilfred is a perfect example. Like, he's like, well, we have the right balance going on and you have to be at the front to make the choices to get rid of the people at the back. And you see this time and time again, especially in a lot of sci-fi like 1984 and like a story like this Snowpiercer, where ultimately, if we allow a central power to dictate classes and dictate everything like they do in Snowpiercer, they literally kill people to keep the balance.
Yeah.
Humanity never thrives or succeeds the way humanity can. We just talked about this, like going back to the lizard brain that people fight over toilet paper. Like, society can't survive if we are like lizards. We're humans. The beautiful thing about humans is we can think things through and achieve the impossible if we work on it, right? And so if you can't compartmentalize humanity like they do in Snowpiercer, at some point it's going to boil over. It's going to break free. It has to. You can't do it.
That the Man, is that his name? The security expert.
Yes.
Man.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was Mom, was it?
Yeah, I'm going to call him Man. Anyway.
Call him Mom.
He
I'm not
makes
sure
this
if I wrote him
point
down.
where he sticks the explosive
oh, yes. Yeah.
chronol
Yeah, the Chronos.
on the door.
Yep.
And he says, I say we go through this gate. You might you might take this as a wall, but I see it as a gate.
Yeah.
Because obviously Curtis would be moving in one direction up the train, but he's still on the train.
Yeah.
And this is the point that this
He wanted to make free.
this security expert saying like you're not really getting through anyway. You're not getting through gates.
No.
You're still in the same spot you were before.
Yeah.
Unless you go sideways.
Yeah.
And you see it's a wall there, but it's not a wall. It's a gate. You just get explosives will do the same thing. And I love that sort of. That was kind of that restatement of a theme there. Really,
yeah. Well, you have to. That's what I mean. Like you have to kind of. You can't. If you contain humanity like this, it's at some point someone's going to burst sideways.
Well, they've been sitting there for 18 years and had achieved nothing.
That's right. And they had great revolts before. They talked about them. They were great stories to tell people, as Wilfred says. You know?
So this one's really exciting.
Yeah, because you did some things that were unexpected. And we know that works in humanity, the story. But that's where I think it's a warning. You could argue hope as well, because again, if we are put into the tails section, at some point we will break free. So there's a bit of hope in there as well. I don't think experiment, but I think this is just.
I was going to go experiment.
No,
I was going to experiment because this is the very question of
space brains are colliding here. Yeah. What's going to happen next?
Well, it's dangerous because brains. We're not space skulls. We're space brains.
They just will bump up again.
It's not good. It's going to be jelly fights.
It'll be neurons spilling everywhere.
So, my take on the experiment here is that you do have this case of let's put a microcosm of humanity in a box.
Fair enough.
And watch what they do.
Yep.
From that point of view,
cage fight it out sort of idea.
And see how it goes, see what sort of resolution is achieved.
Yes.
But I certainly go, I do like the hope idea that we can break free of our own prisons, but they point out it's going to be the kids that actually succeed.
It's always the kids.
All we can do is
it's the next generation.
Provide the fuel.
Yeah.
Provide the addictive drug that's also explosive, and it's the kids who will face polar bears on their own. So maybe that's not great hope there, I suppose.
No, there's not great hope, but there's hope because they kind of get off the train.
Yes.
And and that, I must admit, like seeing that polar bear and they walk in the soft ice because that's what the father said, that the ice is actually ready to crumble, like it's ready for a change. But it's almost like far out, they're now stuck up this mountain, there's polar bears, the trains, wreckage everywhere. But then you think, but you're not on the train anymore. Like the people that would survive that wreckage would have to come together. They have to make some sort of new arrangement, wouldn't they? And if it is the children and the mothers and the young people, they would just do what it takes to survive then in that environment. Yeah, but you wouldn't necessarily. They've broken those shackles that the train.
They've got a new horizon, new set of boundaries to explore.
Yeah. So we'll get more into the plot in a minute or so. So your jelly brain, have you been up to anything creative recently quickly to let the listeners know?
Finished the first draft of my How to Write a Novel book.
Fantastic.
Which is great. And I'm going through now. I am applying... so in case you haven't understood me very well so far, because you've never listened to this before...
I'm sure they've been developed.
All I do is if I hear a new term or I get an idea or something, I research what the experts have done, what's happened in the past. I like to stand on the shoulders of giants. I don't like...
Brilliant idea.
I think that's the best way of sighting new ground is from a high point.
That's very brainiac.
Let's do this analogy thing. But as a result, so I went, okay, so what I wrote this first draft, which was a case of get it all out, the process and procedures and so forth that I have researched on how I have gone about structuring plot and how I think really works to write books, novels in particular. And then I've gone now and said, okay, so this is basically a self-help book.
Yeah.
So how do I structure this so it's effective? Because a lot of people have done self-help books and they do them very well. So I'm now applying the research on, because there are people who have studied and analysed self-help books, much like there are people who've researched and studied plot structures and film writing and all the rest of it. People have done the same thing for self-help books. And I'm not going to say there's a formula for it, but there are processes or procedures or concepts that make a more effective book versus a less effective book.
Yeah, of course.
So that's what I'm applying at the moment. I'm going through putting that in. So the title, for example, it can't just be How to Write a Novel, because that's just not good enough. It's got to be more something like You Will Write a Novel in 8 Steps.
Yeah.
Or the, what was the other one? The 8-Step Novel Plan.
Yeah, I reckon that's been done before, but...
Probably, but these are self-help titles.
Yeah.
And I've got
eight
about
steps to financial freedom.
Yeah, there's all that sort of thing. There's lots of those things. Yeah, so I've got about 6 or 7 different title names there, which I've got, which are all this sort of following this style or format, or appealing to, because it's all a study of psychology, really.
Of course.
Like, you don't want to say How to Write a Novel.
No.
That would be handy for search engines, because that's what people search on. But you want something more like You Will Write a Novel.
Yeah, I like that. I do like that. There's your test audience. I do like that.
There you go. That's the sort of thing. So that's what I'm applying on there at the moment. I've also been... Oh, geez, what did I just watch recently? Been watching that show Ragnarok. It's not really science fiction.
No.
It's definitely not.
It's kind of a Viking prequel or something.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's modern day. It's Norwegian, so it's a little bit different the way they present this sort of story.
Course, I do like that, but
so that's quite good. And also, I've just finished watching the Dark Tower, the Stephen King movie.
Oh, yep.
Gee, the book's better. But to be fair, there's like 7 or 8 or 11 of these books, and there's only one movie. So what you gonna do?
Always hard.
But anyway, so that's sort of what I've been doing. I swear I've been doing something else.
The other thing is, did you read? Have you read the book first?
I read the first book first.
Yeah, I reckon that's almost near impossible if you've read the book to then watch the movie and actually think the movie's better than the book.
Yeah, that book, I haven't read book 2 or anything, but book 1 of The Dark Tower is a clear demonstration of why Stephen King is referred to as a master storyteller.
Oh, he's brilliant.
So I reckon it's every other book of his is really good. So the in-between, it's like the Windows version.
Every second book.
The in-between ones, because he does a lot of writing off the seat of his pants, off the cuff.
He does, yeah.
And so it tends to be a little bit hit and miss.
Yeah.
And but does mean, though, that he comes out with some real gems. Yeah. And some real ordinary stuff that's only saved by the fact that he's really good with words.
They're your words, not mine.
Yeah.
Have you read, just because, I mean, you're saying the self-help book, he's actually written a self-help book, which is...
On writing?
Stephen King on writing. So that's his title. There you go. So you could have Surrey Hughes on writing.
Except Stephen King is a name that sells 1 million copies.
Have you read that?
No, I've read parts of it, and it is my...
You got to read
It's on my target list.
You got to... And look, to be honest... my wife bought it for me a couple of years ago, and I kind of, I have read a few Stephen King books and I've enjoyed them. I wouldn't say like they've been mind-blowingly for me personally, but then I read that and she said, I bought you this because apparently a lot of writers out there say this is the book you should read if you want to be a writer. And I read it and I agree. You read that and you're just like, holy shitballs. Like, he's got super practical techniques in it. He tells you about his writing process. He also tells you about like how he started writing and the good and the bad. He talks about his addictions in the 80s and how that almost just totally ruined him. And he talks about like the car accident story that happened to him when he got ran over, and like the hate, and then how he wrote about that. Like it's a really interesting read, that book. But he just literally has a few sections in that book. It's like, if you're no good at grammar, do this. Yeah. Like it's just hands-on practical shit. Like, he doesn't beat around the bush, doesn't talk about other stuff. He's just like, here we go. And I really liked that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was a great book on writing,
It's on my to-read pile.
Yeah.
It's definitely there.
I think anyone that wants to be a writer has to read that book.
Well, I think so. And as I said, I think also if you want to be a storyteller, read at least the first book of The Dark Tower.
Yeah, right.
Because the way, like, there's basically no plot to it.
Yeah.
To be fair. And that's because it was originally a short story and it blew up. And it's basically the gunslinger walking through the desert after the man in black. and then he catches up with the Man in Black, and like the Man in Black sort of goes, and that like nothing really happens. There's no real resolution there.
Yeah.
But the world that gets built up and the emotion and the feeling, reading it, you feel dusty and dry in your mouth.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can really feel what this world is like.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is just it's more of a study of a scene.
Mm.
And it's like a really big scene.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's beautifully written.
Yeah.
But
he does do that. You know,
like
have you read The Stand? I mean, talking about pandemics.
No.
I've read that. And I mean, the first, I mean, it's a massive book. It's thousands and thousands of words. I can't even remember. I think it's something like 1,800 pages or something, you know, like it's huge. Mm. And apparently they're making a TV show now. They made a telly movie in the 80s. There was an old
series of it.
Yeah, they made a telly movie when we were probably kids or teenagers or something.
No budget though, so.
Yeah. But they're making a series now, or they were. I don't know. I heard about that when I read it 18 months ago. I actually sat down and read it. But like that, he does that. Like the first 8 chapters, like you go into this whole, like each character has a chapter before the event and then after the event, and then there are reactions to the event. Like it builds such a world for these characters. It's incredible, you know, and all of their fears are kind of lived out in those first couple of chapters while the world crumbles, you know, like the whole world breaks down into this dystopian world. How many
weeks after toilet paper fights?
Yeah, I know. The toilet paper fights, he didn't never imagine that.
No.
That's not in this story. But because in The Stand, they kind of like people just die. Like they die really quickly. You know? So, and then you got these people left, the people that the virus didn't kill. So you got this major dystopian. And then it gets really evil, as in there's like an angel and a devil kind of person that are pulling, like the devil's pulling the bad people to them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In Las Vegas, so he like pulls them to him. Yeah, it's a cool book. Anyway, we diverge away from Snowpiercer right now. So
Yeah, I know. It's just like
we're going down a rabbit hole.
So much. We could have another podcast about books.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. About books and writing and reading and things. But Snowpiercer then. So Snowpiercer, we have hope, warning, experiment. It's a warning or hope or experiment, depending on how you want to look at it. But let's go with a bit of a hope warning business going on.
Yeah, I'm going warning. You're going when you're going experiment.
Yeah, I am, but I totally see the other ones. Like, I like the experiment.
Our squishy brains are squished up against each other again.
So now,
but let us know if we're right or wrong on our social media, please, for the love of God.
At Space Brains Pod or at Space Brains Podcast. Yeah,
it would be lovely to hear back from
We've got some characters. We've got Curtis, who is Chris Evans,
Captain America.
Okay, Captain America.
And I know when he did this, he was full flight Captain America because it's 2013.
Yeah.
He's big. He's Captain America, and he kind of took this, I think, as a bit of a risky role. Hey,
yeah.
That, you know, Korean director, Korean story, bit of Hollywood money. He wanted to sidestep, like, not just being pigeonholed as Captain America. He wanted to kind of try something as an actor. I remember seeing a bit about this at the time. And it was a bit of a risk, you know, he's going to have to act in this. Like, it's not just pure bam, bam, wham, thank you, man. Not that, like, I loved Captain America. I think that's a cool movie. But it was very much a bit more of he's going to be in the spotlight with his acting.
Yeah, and he does a good job of that too.
He does a really good job in this, I think.
And he's there with John Hurt, who's, you know, an old school thespian.
Yeah, Ed Harris. And now the Korean guy that plays the dad, I think it's Kang-ho's song, which is in Bong Joon-ho.
Yeah. Parasite.
Yes. No, not Parasite. He's in Parasite.
Yeah, he's in Parasite. Yeah.
And he's in The Host.
Yes.
Yeah. He's very young in The Host.
So he's a bit of...
repeating
sort
himself.
Of same as Johnny Depp is to Ed Burton?
Tim Burton. Tim Burton. Yeah, you're right.
Ed Burton. Ed Wood, I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
He was in Ed Wood too, but Tim Burton. But yeah, Tim Burton
and who is so delightful in this is the character of Mason, Tilda Swinton. And she is also in these other movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's in I think it's Okji, the sort of giant hippopotamus creature, weird thing, whatever it is. I'm not too sure. I haven't.
At the moment?
Okay, I haven't actually seen that, but I know of the movie. But she's in that. She's the lead in that, apart from the little girl. But but I mean, holy shitballs, Surrey! How good is she in this as this character of Mason? And apparently, this is a little sci-fi inside. The character was a male, like Ripley in Alien, and they swapped it once they cast the character, or cast the actor.
Yeah, well, that was good. She was
incredible in this.
Yes,
with the teeth.
Quite memorable. Teeth. Some of her, we'll get to her little speech. At the start,
her speeches were fantastic. But like, she's just so good. You know what I mean? I mean, look, she's a beautiful woman, like in reality, but in here, she's not beautiful. Like, she's just a very sort of maniacal, awful.
She's
crazy woman, isn't she? That's devoted to this system, the class system, because she's really obsessed about Wilfred. It's religious, isn't it?
Yeah, and she portrays everyone else. So
it's written by Bong Joon-ho.
No, it's directed by.
No, it's also written by him.
Was it?
Written by him and Kelly Masterson.
Oh, sorry, yes, okay.
So there's the two of them get the credit for the screenplay, Surrey.
Yes.
And then I keep going to say his name one last time, Bong Joon-ho, and that's it.
We even watched...
Any Koreans out there, please send me some hate mail.
Because we just sat before we did this show and listened to a 1:10 YouTube of how to pronounce his name.
So if you want to make a YouTube video with pronunciation of proper just English to begin with, I'll watch that. And then if you want to do some Korean pronunciation, please do. I'll also watch that.
Yes, indeed.
So, get stuck into the plot. How does this film start?
It starts up with some nice sort of title credits.
It does.
There's sort of shapes obscuring the title credits, and you realise it's kind of silhouetted. Oh, pardon me. Silhouetted things that are passing by, and there's a bit of swirling snow.
There is.
And there's a news broadcast, basically, sort of news snippets. And this is a popular thing to do in movies.
Especially sci-fi movies.
Have the news
futuristic,
in the background.
We have a whole bunch of we have a montage of, newsreel information kind of delivered quickly to the audience and to get us up to speed.
It indicates that in 2014, CW7, which is a chemical, was released into the atmosphere in order to reverse global warming.
Yeah.
And they very cunningly showed pictures of airplanes with contrails flying at the back, which many people have said are actually chemtrails, which is government sponsored chemical dispersion for reasons unknown. But but in this case,
maybe it's coronavirus. Come on,
I thought
go with the conspiracists.
I thought it was quite clever that they showed that with dispersing the CW7, because that is how you would disperse an aerosol in the upper atmosphere.
Of course.
And then it just cuts straight into the train at that point.
Well, it does tell us the world froze.
Oh, yeah.
So it says that they were releasing this to help it, and then the world froze. And then it's 17 years later and we're inside the train.
Yeah, 17 years later, on board a train.
Yep.
And we don't have a lot of context at this point.
It's 2031.
2031, yes.
Somehow in there is that information.
For some reason, they had to tell us an exact year, it made a difference.
And we open with soldiers coming down into this kind of compartment.
It's a dark, cramped space.
Lots of people.
Doors open and there's ranks of forlorn-looking, look like prisoners almost.
Yep.
In rags and
grubby,
so forth.
dirty.
Yeah, and the soldiers line up and just start counting them.
They want to count them.
They click away on a little counter and make them sit down. One of them, though, doesn't sit down. He stands there for a bit longer.
It's one of those counters that you get at nightclubs.
Yeah,
like a real clicker.
Well, because you're on a train.
Like, you're not getting past this.
It's on a train. That's the way they do it on a train, isn't
that's
it?
True.
They have little
it's old school.
mechanical devices. And that's interesting, though, because they've been 17 years on this train. Although at this point, I'm not sure we 100% know that's the case, but
Yeah.
We'll go with it.
Yeah.
So
And you're right, this fella doesn't sit down.
he doesn't sit down, and it goes back, and then he gets yelled at, and his buddy next to him says, "Hey, come on, sit down. What are you doing?"
It's not the time.
And then he sits down and he says, like, "Oh, it's all 5 doors are open for exactly 4 seconds or something."
Yeah. And the soldiers ask randomly for, is anyone a violinist?
Yes, we just need your hands, which is a bit ominous if you ask me.
It actually is, isn't it? It's a nice little, maybe, I didn't even connect just then what actually happened. So we'll come back to that. And they give out, so they say that and no one really volunteers. And then they're giving out this food ration. And they all are pretty keen for this jelly, glycerous kind of little slab.
Slightly pinkish coloured, I think.
Yeah,
maybe.
it doesn't look good. I
Browny
mean,
pink.
what's that type of cheese that's like that? There's a type of cheese that's a bit like that. It was a dip. You know, I can't remember
I
the
don't
name
know.
of
I
that.
think it looks a bit like an agar jelly.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
or
very
maybe-
jelly.
Maybe Turkish Delight, but firmer.
Turkish Delight, which some weirdos like. I'm not a big fan of Turkish Delight, but they're these
Presumably the
little
Turkish.
slabs. Yeah, but I don't know. We didn't see it in that Turkish movie we did all those times ago.
Oh, maybe Turkish Delight is like French fries. It's not actually
It's
Turkish.
It's not
Perhaps
Turkish.
it's Hungarian or Romanian.
Yeah,
or
stop
something.
being stereotypical, right? Sorry.
If you're Turkish, do you like Turkish Delight?
Let us know. Well,
Is it Turkish?
yeah,
Let us know.
I won't go down that rabbit hole.
Is it made out of cockroaches? Just ask him.
No, don't say that.
It could be. I don't know.
Anyway, Curtis and Edgar, who's the friend, they talk about, is it time to take over the train? And they're sort of like, no, it's not quite time yet.
Yeah, it's not time
There's,
yet.
there's a lot of muffled voices. They're kind of edgy. You can tell they've been waiting for an opportunity.
They get the violinist,
Yep.
but not his wife.
Yeah, they don't want his wife. They
Just
want,
one.
just one of you. Just one of you,
Just
soldier says.
one unit. Yes, and so they take the violinist off and they just rip him away from his wife. And, off he goes.
And Curtis then, look, to be honest, I was a bit confused about this watching it, but Curtis then wants to trade his piece of jelly meat with, it's like a little kid has a piece of jelly meat.
He walks through the
Like,
cabin
I just got confused with this.
He sort of seems to be talking to people to him,
Yeah.
and then the
All of a
woman
sudden he wants to
says, here, this, Tim's got it.
and they're kind of like, he wants to trade, but the kid's a kid. He's like, nah, puck you. And he runs away, and then and the mum says like, you can have mine, but the kid runs away, and then they're like chasing the kid. And I suppose the whole point here is like, we're seeing this section is like really crammed, isn't it? People are on, there's bunk beds on bunk beds on bunk beds. There's people on top of each other, and there's all sorts of like, real Mad Max kind of styled shit everywhere, isn't there? Like there's just stuff everywhere, and there's no room to move or do anything beyond
A lot of people are
your
just
little space.
lying in their bunk.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not great.
Yeah. Apparently that's what cruise ships are like. I've never been on one, but that's what they're like.
Is that before or after the food poisoning?
I
I think it turns Mad Max just shortly
yeah.
after E. coli.
Then it turns into real Mad Max. People start eating each other. So the plan, Curtis reveals that Igna is that they want to take over the train, take the engine, because past revolts have never taken the engine.
And that's the key. But they get this block off the kid.
Yeah, they get the block.
And in it is a little pellet which he opens up, and it's got a little message in it.
Yes.
It says, I don't know what it says. It's not terribly important though.
No. I think it says... No, I can't remember. To be honest, what was that first message?
I don't.
I remember the last message. Last message is train.
Yes.
And that's the thing. They're very cryptic messages. So that's probably
Yeah.
why we can't quite remember. But there is a little message.
It wasn't transit. It was clearly a signal of some sort.
Signal like now's the time.
Now's the time, dude.
And the thing is with Curtis is that others are saying to him that he's the leader, but he's saying he's not the leader. He's denying his leadership.
I can't lead. And even old Gilliam says, you're going to have to lead. And Edgar says, well, Gilliam's getting old. He's going to die.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to take
That's
over.
right. He says Gilliam. So Gilliam is this old man. He's got no legs,
No
or
arm,
no
one
arm and no
one
leg. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's a real invalid in that way. But he was once the train driver or the train engine.
I think he's just a leader type person.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's more of that is revealed later in the story.
It is actually, sorry, yeah. But there's a guy that's not... Anyway, so Curtis is kind of panning off this idea of leadership and putting on. And then all of a sudden the soldiers come back and they want the kids for a medical check. They want to take all the kids for a medical check. And this causes a real confrontation, like a mum of a child really fights them.
Tries
the father
to hide them,
she tries to hide the child, that's right. And the father they grab his child and he tries to fight them and they beat him up. And there's quite a violent struggle in this part with the guards, with the children, taking the children. And there's a woman in yellow, pure yellow suit, comes out.
Yeah, she's weird. She measures everything.
And she's quite happy with two of the children in particular. Yeah, she's got a special measure tape that she kind of rips
Tim
out.
and Frank. Not Frank. I can't remember his name now.
The curly-haired dad?
It's curly-haired dad's kid.
Yeah.
Who also has curly hair?
Yeah. So, and at that point they're saying, Matt, maybe now's the time. But again, Curtis is like, no, it's not quite the time. Not quite.
Yeah.
The whole time you're like going, come on, Curtis, you got to make your move. But because of the violent struggle, then we have this beautiful moment of Mason, Tilda Swinton, enters the room. And she's like this crazy-assed devotee of Wilford who runs the train. And she's there to punish the father. And they get his arm. And there's these two weird guys as well. I found these guys really bizarre. Like, were they in a relationship together? Like,
because they sort of had... Yeah, one of them had his head resting on his shoulder.
Yeah, and then he shrugged it off.
Wearing their little suits.
They were wearing really beautiful suits. And they were like head honcho guards. They weren't
henchmen.
I don't know what the hell these guys were, but they were also, as we find out later, like they're really good fighters. So that's what the deal was. But I don't know if they were in a relationship, and I wanted to know.
Or they're brothers.
Anyway, so they punish the father. They force his arm outside the train.
They put a clock on him for 7 minutes.
7 minutes. They say 7 minutes will be plenty at this high altitude. Yeah. That's it. That's the word. And while that is happening, Mason, Tilda Swinton, delivers this beautiful speech, doesn't she?
About it's crazy ass speech.
Like it's about like them being at the back of the train and we being in the middle of the train.
Don't wear
and
the shoe on your head.
Yeah, she puts the shoe on his head because he threw the shoe at the woman.
Yeah,
the woman in the yellow suit, and so she takes but it's just a total scene of power, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
like
it's all
the
about
foot and wear the head.
Yeah,
we wear the hat, you wear the shoe.
Yeah,
and everyone has its place, and everyone knows what they're supposed to do. And then she does this weird hand action thing, like some sort of a ritual.
Yeah,
like we're both sitting here in our studio doing this hand action. You don't know. I'm sure you've seen the film.
Well, they should have seen the film.
She does this thing with the shoe and the hand. Yeah. And it's weird.
There's multiple shots, and I mean, I just got to say it now rather than later with the technical thing. But there's quite a few shots through this speech, and that's the thing. That we're told that he's out there for 7 minutes. So, I mean, I don't know if I didn't time it, but does a speech go for 7 minutes? I don't know, but it's like. I think it's one of those things that maybe it's a bit of a cultural thing because, again, in Australia, we're very Western and our politicians, it's all about the media and stuff. But in Asia, in some of these Asian countries where we do have different levels of communism and dictatorships and different political spheres than what we are granted with here, like, I think that's where Bong Joon-ho has maybe taken a bit of inspiration and pushed it because it really felt to me like a strong body language of the message with the way she gestured her hands and the shoe and
the repetition of you don't put a shoe, we each have a place, and you're sort of thinking things like you could imagine a North Korean speech.
Yeah.
Maybe Bong has seen some North Korean propaganda type stuff where someone said,
I believe so.
This is the proper way, because it's a very, I don't know, it's that very, very class aware type of speech where we're at the top and you're at the bottom and this is the proper way it all works. And this is correct and good.
Essentially it is a power speech, but it was really well done by Tilda, really well written,
somewhat comical.
There still is a comical because at the end she goes, well, what's the time? You know, like she hasn't spoken for 7 minutes. Like it was like it's still got another 45 seconds, I believe. The general says.
Maybe Wilfred will want to say something.
Yeah, then they call Wilfred, don't they? And it doesn't work.
He doesn't answer. Nothing happens.
Which is great comedy because I think, again, like we think of those communistic moments of time and they can be all about power, but things can go wrong.
Yeah.
So in this case, she's like, well, let's call Wilfred and he'll have something to add to this.
Yeah.
Shh, we can't get him on the line. You know, like it's a great, like, because again, this is in the future where apparently this is all that humanity is left is the people on the train. And, well, that's it, isn't it? You know? I did notice on a side note when we finally see the map of the world, the train never went through Australia.
No.
So maybe there was people in Australia. Mad Max, the Thunderdome.
Hey, that's a fan theory.
That's a fan theory. You heard it first.
You're wondering
Space
what
Brains.
else has happened in the world while Mad Max is going on?
It was snow.
Snow.
And a train. Oh, well, it's quite
Perpetual
possible.
Christmas time.
It was.
So anyway, yes.
So we had that beautiful speech.
Pulls the arm out of the wall. And they smash it with a big hammer.
It, yeah.
Which is it's this really awful thing where he hits it with a little spoon. Dunk,
Dunk, dunk.
dunk, dunk.
Finding the soft spot.
Finds a bit where it's not fully frozen through, and they bash just before
They
that.
smash that, yeah. It's
And
horrific.
So the guy with his arm smashed, he obviously doesn't enjoy that very much.
But it's again, isn't that a great example? Isn't it? It's like we're the powerful people. Here's a demonstration of power. We can rip someone's arm off. You know. I found it, it was funny as well because he had the arm out the window and there was like moments he's like, ah, and then he's like, ah, and there's like nothing. And then there's another moment he's like, ah, like it was really well done. That
so after this, we discover that they're going to get prepared.
Yeah.
So they start pulling out drums and things.
Yeah. Well, here they like get ready for their they're getting ready for their takeover.
Yeah.
And then the emergency light comes on. So they're not quite ready. They've kind of like got their drums lined up.
Their drums lined up in a big
They weren't quite
sausage.
ready when all of a sudden someone was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they line up to have their roll call taken.
Yep.
And sure enough, the soldiers come in and start clicking and they all sitting down at the time.
Yep.
And then there's this question about bullets because Mason had said, I put that, because Gilliam came up and sort of confronted her for a moment.
Yeah.
And Gilliam said, I'll put that useless gun away. And so Curtis is convinced there's no bullets left. They've gone extinct from the last revolution.
Yep.
They've basically gone through all their bullets.
That's correct.
Because on this train, there's a finite resources.
Yeah.
There are some things can be recycled, like the water and obviously their protein blocks.
Yep.
But there are some things that are just, bullets are one of them, seems. And it's getting tense, and they're about to make the people sit down in front of this bunch of barrels that are all joined together, which I pretty much guess was so they got 4 seconds to jam it in between all the doors.
Yeah.
So they're going to go up, and they're saying, "Do we do it now?" And the people are starting to grab knives, they're getting ready, and Curtis is going like, "We don't know." So he suddenly rushes forward and grabs the rifle that is aimed at someone.
Yeah.
And puts it to his head and then reaches forward with his thumb and pulls the trigger and goes click.
There's no bullets.
And there's no bullets. Suddenly everyone just goes, there's no bullets.
So there's a violent fight.
They smash these guards down and they run forward with these barrels and charge it through all the doorways and knock all the doors down. And there's sort of a bit of a fight. And there's a guard at the end with what is he, swinging around there? Something big and heavy?
Yeah, he's got an axe or something.
Yeah, and then they're like that little skinny bugger runs up and jumps and hangs and stabs and it's a beautiful
some little
thing.
Violent dude at the back, isn't he?
Yeah, he's pretty keen on getting through. And Bongo. Oh, that's what the little pellet was, telling him Soon Ho, whatever his name is a security expert locked in the prisoner thing.
Yeah.
That's what the little pellet was, and so that's why they get up through into the prisoner section. And they pull out the security specialist.
Yes.
So this scruffy-looking fellow who's a drug addict. Yes. This Chronol, which is an industrial waste product that gets people high, apparently. Yeah. And there's a tense confrontation with him where they have to use his little translation tools. Yeah. And I like this little plot point because it would have been easy just to have him speak English.
Yeah.
Unless maybe the actor doesn't speak very good English. But he probably does,
Well, you could convince it.
Yeah, he could fake it. I mean, Jackie Chan did it for his first few films. He just he couldn't really speak English, but he just kind of repeated back the lines that he had to.
And Will Ferrell did it in that Spanish
Yeah. And,
It's like every day you just learn the lines and you say it.
yeah. But anyway, so instead of doing that, they stuck to having Korean.
Yeah.
Which I think is also because he's a Korean director, he probably wanted to have some Koreanness in it.
I think so, yes.
He didn't want to, like, you know, totally whitewash the film.
No.
So that was quite good. They had these little translator devices and speaks to him, and there's a confrontation where he's not very forthcoming. He seems a bit grumpy, and it's revealed that he's got his daughter in prison with him, that he says she's coming along with us, and I want 2 blocks of chronol per gate we get through.
Yeah.
He keeps calling them gates. And they go, yeah, sure, no worries. And thus they go up to the first door.
And she's into the Cronus too. So the thing here is everyone's kind of like, ugh, these druggies, you know, like, do we have to
who
work
are these
with
guys to
druggies?
judge? They're cannibals.
Yeah. Yeah, is it worse to be a cannibal or a drug addict? I mean, come on. But I think the whole thing is like they're suspicious of like the success, aren't they, of it, that this guy's...
He doesn't look very reliable.
He doesn't look reliable. They give him the Cronus and him and his daughter kind of sniff it and they're, you know...
And his daughter seems to have slightly prophetic utterances about the coming door opening.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they open the first door and it's empty bunk beds.
Yeah.
And some little trays. So these guys must be the... just above, these are the economy, the ultra economy, or whatever.
Ultra economy, yeah.
Yeah, because their bunk beds and everything are not a lot better. It looks a bit prison-like, really.
Yeah, it looks more like where we came from the tail is just grubby and overcrowded and all that.
Some of
this
the beds
place
are
just
made
kind of looks a little bit cleaner.
And their beds in the back end are sort of made of old piping.
Yeah.
You can still see some of the valve handles on it and stuff. But this had to remind me a bit of a prison. Or maybe a freighter ship sort of.
But are they the
dormitory?
guards then? Are they like? Were they the guard beds that they just
guards.
killed? Yeah. But so one thing they get to see here, but is then they finally see a window.
Oh yeah,
they get to see the world. You know. Yeah, and they get to see that. Well, the world is frozen.
And this is our first chance to see that the world is indeed frozen.
Yeah.
Because so far they've been in the tail end. It's all been dark.
Yeah.
It's quite difficult to see.
So then they push forward through the next gate and they come across Paul, who is someone they knew.
He'd been taken
and
earlier.
they thought he was sending the messages to Curtis. And they kind of come across him. And again, a bit like Nangun, he's a bit shady again. Like he's not quite with it, is he?
He's a bit cray-cray.
He's a bit cray-cray. And when they look into where he's making and he's like all happy about making them the protein blocks, and you know, like it doesn't seem like, and he doesn't want to leave. Yeah. And then they kind of look into, or a couple of them, Curtis and another guy, look into what is in the protein bars, and they realize it is all cockroaches and bugs and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not anything.
I thought it was a rather strong reaction from Curtis, considering the conditions he's been living in.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought he would have that strong a reaction. Sure, maybe he'd go, oh, that's not... But you got to think, what else did you think it was? Yeah. Like, really? I guess you could hope it was some kind of algae or yeast.
And come on, it's slightly better than Soylent Green, isn't it?
Yeah, it's better than what they were eating before.
The people.
They're eating people for ages.
So he makes the Foon these protein blocks, and they're made of bugs. And then there's a message. There's actually a message that they notice. And this time it says water.
Water. And Gilliam says, the water carriage is control carriages for up.
Next. Yeah, coming up.
And if we control the water, then we can get a negotiation point.
Yeah, we control the train.
And Curtis is like, he's not entirely sold on stopping there. But, and I have to say, I sort of suspicious of Gilliam's here going, oh, just stop there, stop there. The whole time he's kind of, let's not go too far, but, he's an old dude with missing limbs.
Anyway, then Curtis does talk to, the daughter, and he's saying to her, he's saying to her this idea of like, you seem to know what's beyond the next door.
What's the next
and
one?
her dad's unlocking the gate and the door, and she actually says, don't open the gate. And it's too late. The gate opens.
Dad just as she says it, he puts the last wire in.
And it opens, and there's all these men in balaclavas.
Ski masks with axes and spears and stuff.
And don't you just love that the balaclavas are and ski masks, like, it's just their mouths?
Yeah,
like, it's not their
weird.
eyes. Like, it is just their mouths.
Yeah, and this is a classic movie technique, and it's used in Star Wars with the stormtroopers.
Yeah.
By giving them these faceless masks, you dehumanize them.
You do.
Because it wasn't the point that they were people. The point was there was a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they were looking tough.
They were. And they've got these, like, full-blown, axes. And, like, they're not just standing there, ready to beat them up. They've all got these weapons.
Axes. And then they do this odd thing. They pull out a big fish.
Pull out a big, giant fish.
And then, like, cut it with the axe so the axe has fish blood on it.
Yeah.
And then they pass the fish around and...
They're all, like, slicing
and
the fish.
I don't quite get that, except maybe it was showing that the axes were sharp and they had fish.
Yeah, but it's a bit gruesome, isn't it?
And it says, Curtis says to Edgar, he says, be careful. Which is one of those funny things. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, I will.
No, I'm not going to be careful.
Because it would make such a difference if I'm careful here. These guys have axes.
Yeah.
It's best for me to be a little bit reckless, actually. Yeah, so...
Yeah, I'm never too sure about that line. Are you? Like, it's always a bit like... Are you saying it because you guys are, like, really tough and, like, normally you just win all your battles?
I have a feeling
this is going to be a tough one?
I think it's just a substitute for saying, I don't want you to get hurt.
Yeah, like it's a man.
I care about you.
Sorry, I love you, but I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say, be careful.
Watch yourself.
Watch your back, bro.
Hey, bro. Yeah, okay.
It is like that.
Enough broing, yeah. And then hilarity ensues. A fight ensues. And
a
blood
brutal
spatters.
fight ensues, doesn't it?
Spatters on the windows, spatters on people's faces. There's people being hacked. And it's quite a realistic one in that there's a lot of... I don't think there's any music while this is playing.
No, it's just a fight.
It's just kind of people sort of grunting and being in pain. It's not that over the top. Whoosh, whoosh.
There's a really great, to me, this is actually, when I first saw this, the first viewing of this was a scene that stood out to me because there's a moment in the fight as well that Curtis slices and dices his way through. And it's quite a long, it might go for 45 seconds or 60 seconds, which doesn't sound long, but in an action sequence, it is really long where he kind of, he goes forward and he fights someone and slices them. And then there's someone over his back and he kind of stabs them in the back and he has to turn when someone's sliding in at his leg and he hits them. And then, as he's like pulling his arm around someone else's, but then Egner kind of slices that guy. And you kind of followed him. And at the same time, in the foreground, in the background, you've got all these people fighting. It's a great way of, if you watch things like Game of Thrones and Vikings, it's a great way for the audience to follow the main character, but feel like you're in the battle scene unfolding. And it's not just one guy slice, they fall over. It's actually like, this is what the battle would be like. Like you're hitting someone and someone else comes in with their axe.
He was ignoring a number of people because if they're already engaged with someone else, he sort of ignores them and concentrates on where he's going.
And he's trying to keep, like, I think in the symbol of this story is he keeps trying to move forward.
It's showing his determination.
He's determined to, like, not take, like there might be people behind him fighting, but he wants to keep shoving forward to get to the front of the train. But I think it's a really great train. And then the train hits, like, an ice part where they all have to sort of, like, stop fighting.
Is that after the bridge?
I thought it's before the tunnel.
No, because Mason comes out and says, "Oh, stop!"
Stop. That's right. Yeah,
and everyone's sort of a bit shocked by this loudspeaker blaring, telling them to stop.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
and they're crossing this bridge. We're crossing the Narrows Bridge.
Yeah,
and as the audience is going, but everyone sort of seems to stop, like, "Oh, whoa!"
Oh, yeah, that's right. And it's New Year's Eve.
And then it's like, "Happy New Year's!" Yeah, like, woo! Yeah, like, and. Edgar even says, I hate getting older.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing you're worried about when you're in the middle of this train car full of,
people,
axe-wielding maniacs.
Yeah.
And then they blockages ahead.
Yeah, and she delivers a speech about them being filthy.
Filthy, yes.
Filthy, what does she say? I just wrote down, I'm trying to...
they're ingrates.
Ingrates, yeah, you're not you got to know your place in here. And then this is where she kind of like grins a bit evilly, and there's like darkness, and it's a tunnel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They hit through a few ice blockages first, which sort of knocks everyone around, makes them all have to sort of, it knocks the fight out of everyone basically a little bit and stuns them. And that's where then she picks up her little goggles, and all the dudes pull down goggles, and is that his name? Nam.
Nangong Minsong.
Yeah, so they call him Nam. So they said to, Nam says, "Oh, you're all fucked."
Yeah.
And sure enough, they enter it, and they say, "Why?"
It's the longest tunnel.
It's a big tunnel.
Yeah.
And it's a long one.
It's a long
And
tunnel.
it goes pitch black, but all of the soldiers have pulled down night vision goggles.
Yeah, so they can see.
And then we're seeing through the eyes of the captain, I assume.
Yeah.
So we got the night vision, and there's just massacre now the other direction.
Well, now they're not kind of fighting; they're kind of like hovering, aren't they? And then the soldiers are kind of like taking executive swipes.
Yeah,
to slaughter people.
They're moving in there.
Yeah.
It's turning into a bit of a massacre on part of the tailenders now. The tailenders were doing quite well. Not quite well, but they were pushing their way in, and now they're being pushed back.
And Mason is loving it. She's like, "This is going to be good."
Yeah, don't look at me. Look back that way.
And Curtis calls for fire.
Yeah, he remembers that kid took the cigarette matches.
Yes.
So then they light some torches.
Yeah. And that guy, that skinny
runner dude,
suddenly runs all the way to where they are. I was always like, why is he not fighting? He's obviously a good fighter.
He seems to like it.
He seems to like killing people. Why is he not fighting? But from this point on, he does. But he kind of hung back, didn't he? Which is, again, interesting culturally, I think, because you do take other things like Game of Thrones and Vikings and stuff, and you have your best fighters at the front. Whereas in this scenario, that dude did kill someone, and then he just kind of went back to the back.
Well, they called him in
to
kill that guy.
Yeah. So, kills him and then goes back to his
he's done his bit. So they come charging in. So he
comes running with the fire.
All the torches. And then with the torches, the battle swings back the other way. Yeah. And there's fighting back and forward, and then Curtis takes the one of the controllers hostage. Yeah. Oh, no, this is the fighter dude. Takes him hostage and shows him the tattoos on his arm, surrender or die. Yeah. The guy says, surrender, put them all down. And
Mason says...
looks at him and goes,
who cares?
He gives some sort of weird dismissive gesture.
Yeah. So he kills
him and they keep fighting. And
then she gets stabbed.
She cops a thrown knife in her thigh or something.
Yeah.
And she goes, okay, I've got to get out of here. And Curtis charges forward and is going to get to her.
Right before that, Curtis...
Yeah, he's going to get to her, but he's caught up short because now that weird...
Suit dude
has his Edgar with a knife to him.
Yeah.
And Curtis looks back and there's a bit of agonize and he goes, screw it, I've got to achieve this. There's no time to stop now. So he pushes forward. Edgar looks like he's about to get away but gets stabbed in the back.
Yeah.
And then they capture Mason.
Curtis knows.
And the battle is over.
Yeah. And she calls everyone to stop fighting and surrender. It's a good scene, that one, isn't it? Because he has a moment where he's like, he could save Egner or kind of get to the door. And you know what I mean? Like he has to make that decision between getting through the next gate or saving Egner, and he decides to...
There's almost like a bit of a communication when they look where Curtis goes, and Edgar just sort of realises that he's got to go.
Yeah.
And he sort of...
It's a tough one, but
he's not happy about it, but he's kind of... It's not like Curtis goes and he looks all betrayed.
No.
Curtis goes and he's sort of, okay, I understand that. And then he tries to escape. He knocks the guy back a bit, but gets cops in the back.
It's a tough one, but after everything they've gone through, you're kind of like, dude, that's rough.
I wonder if you thought about going back and having a bit of a taste.
I wonder what he about to eat him as a... Oh, no, that's later in the story.
Yes.
And he captures Mason and she stops fighting.
Yeah, they have her prisoner and they threaten to cut her arm off.
Yeah.
In fact, the dude whose name I can't remember who had his arm frozen off threatens to chop her arm off. And
she suddenly kind of turns a bit saying... Wilfred's the one with the answers. Like, we need to get to Wilfred.
Yeah, you kill him and let me live.
Yeah, like, I'll take you to Wilfred and then you have to kill him. You know, there's a really cool... Again, I love this character in this movie. Like, she is just the bomb in this story.
It's like... The feeling I got from her there was like she's devoted to Wilfred because he's so powerful.
Yes.
Which means it's like, you've got to kill him.
Yeah.
Because if you kill him,
well, then I'm okay.
Then I'm sweet.
I'm not going to, yeah.
Otherwise, I'm still in his power, in which case he's awesome.
Yes.
And, I love him.
If you're Curtis, you're going to be Wilfred, sure. I'll be the same for you.
Yeah.
But I'm not, you're going to kill him. Otherwise, I'm dead either way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the deal. She's very clear. So they kind of decide that, Gilliam has said, you've gotten further than anyone else has gotten before, Curtis. We will stay here. We'll wash up. We will replenish.
Yeah, your men are tired.
Injured. We'll take care of the prisoners. You go forward. This has been the biggest success that we've ever had. But it's about him also saying, well, you're the leader, isn't it, in that moment? Like, you have to embrace this.
If you're going forward, you're the one who's leading forward.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a, what do you call him, Alexander the Great moment. Well, Alexander the Great, he wanted to conquer all of Asia Minor, like India and so on. And his advisors said, we're all kind of, like, you've got a pretty big empire already, and we're all kind of a bit tired of traipsing all about the place. But, Alexander goes, nah, cuts a gorge and knot and says, I'm leading you into Asia Minor. And he, lost a lot of his troops because his own tactic of having his troops marry into the local population to prevent revolts also meant then that they were all kind of happy. Like, we got, like, we got land from conquering, and we've got families here, and we kind of like to just stay here. This is really sweet.
This is a good deal I've got now. You've given us a good deal. I don't want to move on.
And I think this is a bit, Gilliam's is sort of saying, the men are tired. We've gotten further than anyone before. We've got water. We've got, a long way. If you're going to go forward, it's on your own. Yeah. And so he does. And he takes obviously Nam and his daughter, and he takes
Mason as their capture.
Mason's captive, and the one-armed guy whose name escapes me, and Tim's mum, whose name also escapes me. And I found it hard taking her seriously because she's in The Office, isn't she?
No.
She's in one of these.
30 Rock, I think, isn't it?
30 Rock, yeah. She's in one of these comedies where she's quite good.
Yeah, she is.
And so I was struggling taking her.
She does the
seriously.
same like head shake, that she does, in both of them.
She's quite good in this movie, but because I associated with a comedic role, it was tough. It was like watching Matt LeBlanc in the Lost in Space movie.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I kept waiting for him to say something like Joey.
Yeah.
But he was trying to be an action hero, and he's just like, Joey, no, you're not fooling anyone.
Yeah. Where's our Joey?
So anyway,
they go through and they come across the sushi station, don't they?
Oh yeah, they walk into the aquarium. It's this incredible, a train car aquarium tunnel like you get at the Perth Aquarium or the Sydney Aquarium.
Yeah,
probably the San Diego Aquarium.
Something
I've not
like
been there. I'm gonna guess. And there's just a sushi chef at a little sushi bar, and. Mason says, "Oh, would you like some sushi? You're very lucky. It's only twice a year. Once at New Year's, once in June or whatever it is."
Yeah.
And so it's this weird little sidebar where everyone's sitting there really enjoying their sushi.
Yeah, and that's when she says, like, it's a bit of a metaphor for the aquarium. Like,
it's a closed ecosystem.
It's a closed ecosystem like the train. Like, we have to keep everything in balance. You can't have the fish overpopulate in different numbers. You have to keep it an equilibrium.
Yeah, so we could have more sushi.
Yeah.
But then you deplete all the fish.
Yes.
And I think this movie does carry a bit of an environmentalist message too.
Yeah, of course.
The Earth is a closed ecosystem.
Yep.
And there's only so many resources we can take, and we have to be responsible to achieve an equilibrium. But
definitely.
Yeah, and it was this bizarre demonstration of the privilege, the differences, levels in privilege, where there's sitting there a chef just making sushi, which is just miles away from their protein blocks, which they make Mason eat.
Yeah,
they take the sushi off her and give her a protein block.
They do.
She actually eats.
She does eat it. Yeah, she goes for it. She knows that Curtis is going to be the next leader, so she knows. So they go forward into a next crazy carriage, which is the school
with
the pregnant teacher, And they sing songs about Wilfred.
And they've got the hand actions.
They got all
Every
the
time
hand actions.
going into the
You know,
future.
snobby little like blonde American teenage girl kind of thing. That's like the people at the back eat each other. You know.
Well,
like,
she's Willy Wonka, the
yeah.
Veruca Salt.
Veruca Salt. She's exactly like that.
Exactly Veruca Salt.
And this world is very Willy Wonka, isn't it? Because
I'll talk a bit about that in a little
Yeah.
bit because there's a whole Willy Wonka fan theory on this one. But
yeah, because it's definitely there in that room suddenly, isn't it? It's all bright and cheerful and that. And I mean, they sing songs about Wilfred being the savior, and it's beyond just someone running the train. It's like he's a god.
It does remind me a bit of North Korean stuff you sort of see where the school kids sing the praises of the great leader. And they're saying if you go outside the train, we die. If the train engine stops, we die. Yeah.
But they mention that, don't they? Like they suddenly, the teacher says, oh, it's the anniversary. And it's like at some point in the past, these people tried to stop the train, failed, the famous five the seven or something. And then we're passing them. They tried to stop the train. They couldn't. So they jumped off the train and look how far they made it. And about 100 meters from the train, there's these frozen people, figures. You don't really see them up close, but you can see the shape of
Nam
people.
explains he calls Yuno over and says, I want you to see this.
Yeah.
And the lead woman there, she was a cleaning woman in the first class coaches. She was an Inuit, an Eskimo. And she would tell me about all the different types of ice and snow. And so I figured she would have a chance. But they're all frozen.
Yeah.
Too cold.
Which is a really nice storytelling device, isn't it? Because in that moment, as an audience, you're like, there is no way off this train.
Yeah.
And he's even saying it when then later he's claiming we should get off the train.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's like he's telling his daughter the warning story, which is us as an audience as well, because we don't really know either. We're learning about this world like the daughter.
Well, I think his point of view changes in the greenhouse carriage, which is only sort of explained
at the end as well.
Yeah, it's not really explained in omission.
Yeah.
Because so they bring out the eggs, the celebration eggs, the New Year's Eve celebration eggs, after having a whole big hoopla about everything.
Yeah.
And the violinist comes out and his string breaks because the eggs are handed out, celebration eggs are handed out by some dude who's credited as Egghead.
Yeah. And he looks like an egghead. And
Curtis looks at the bottom of his egg and there's a capsule message inside of it. And as they're going down, handing out the eggs to the tail end carriage passengers and everyone, he opens this thing and it unfolds. It says blood. And then the violin string snaps and it flicks back and cuts the violinist's face.
Yeah.
And then we cut to Egghead and he's handing out the eggs to the tail end passengers who say, oh, I thought chickens were extinct. And Egghead says, oh, no, well, there's a number of things that people think are extinct but aren't.
Yeah.
Oh, like what? Which is like one of those foolish questions to ask. Because had they not asked that question, he wouldn't have been able to make his little one-liner and kill them all. Yeah. He says, and he pulls out a gun, like bullets. Shoots a bunch of guys and unlocks the captured guards and the funny suit-wearing fellow.
Yeah.
And they tip over the egg cart, go a whole bunch of guns, and they go to town on the tailenders.
Yeah.
And then there's likewise in the school carriage.
Yeah, the pregnant
the teacher whips out a little machine pistol thing and starts blamming away and shoots one-armed curly-haired dude and a couple other guys. And who is it chucks a knife into her throat? Skinny dude. Skinny fighter guy does.
He does, yeah.
I wish I knew his name.
Yeah, we should.
Gray. His name was Gray.
Gray?
Yes, okay. I looked it up on Wikipedia.
Okay, let's go Gray.
Chucks a knife into her throat, which is kind of controversial from a Hollywood point of view because she was, first of all, she was blonde and white and a teacher. And secondly, or thirdly, depending on how you count these things, pregnant.
Yeah.
But Watushka, it was okay because she was shooting people.
Yeah.
In a schoolroom. Isn't that
a schoolroom, yeah.
Funny that it's actually the teacher. Anyway.
Yep.
It doesn't show what happens to the kids at this point.
No.
I think they just
ducked under the desk. Yeah.
Because, let's face it, it'd be a bit scary.
Yep.
And yeah, so they progress on through.
They go forward.
Well, they pick up Mason, and they're not happy with Mason, and she cops a bullet in the face at that point.
She does,
because they see the video screen monitor. They've got Gilliam on his
gets
knees.
executed by the hitman.
Yeah, the old suited dude.
The suit guy just shoots him.
So then they shoot Mason in the face.
So they shoot Mason in the face. Curtis does it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And continue on.
And they continue on. And then so they hit this point in the train. They're moving forwards, going through some interesting things like a sauna. And,
they don't.
A spa thing.
They go through like a restaurant and a bar and a some sort of with swimming pool arrangement.
Yeah.
And while in a swimming pool arrangement with a glass dome,
they
have to go around a very tight corner.
Yeah, yeah.
And let's call him the hitman.
Yeah,
dude in the suit.
He
sees them through.
You
can see because the train is curved around on it, so like the shape of a letter U.
Yeah,
and so he shoots through the glass.
Yeah. Which the others aren't happy with.
No, and then Curtis shoots back with the other guard says, "You can't do that, sir," and he smacks him in the face. He says, "Shut up."
Yeah.
And he's like sticking some sort of putty things in the bullet holes. And there's this cool sort of gunfight back and forward.
Yeah.
And then they pass around a bunch of buildings.
They run out of bullets.
Cranes and things, which block them, and they reload. And then they just stare at each other through their respective little hole. And they each fire one shot, and the bullet lodges in the glass, like right at the person's head, but doesn't go through. And it's at that point they realise that they're just not, they can't penetrate the glass on the other side.
Yeah,
they can only just barely shoot through where they are, and so they move on.
They do.
It's kind of that, we want to get each other, but we can't just now, so we'll accept it.
Anyway, so then he kind of like the hitman catches up to them, but doesn't he? Where they get into while the delay in trying to open the gates, the hitman comes up and it's this real sudden hand-to-hand violent scene, isn't it?
They go through the sauna section.
Yeah, they go through the sauna section.
There's steam everywhere, and there's like...
So you can't see, but he's sort of like, he even kills one of his guards, one of his soldiers, because he's kind of like not sure what's going on or who they're killing.
He shoots... He shoots someone in a passenger. So you shot a passenger. He shoots the guard. And the other guy says, "I didn't see anything.
I've got no problem with this or something." Yeah. And anyway, then he's kind of like opening these sauna doors, looking for them, and it becomes this real violent, up close, And this hitman, he takes them all down, doesn't he? I mean, he like literally
Gray fights and gets a knife through his hand, and he knocks Curtis down, just about stabs him, and that's
knocks out the father has a crack. Like they all kind of have a crack with him, but he just kind of annihilates.
And then Tim's mum.
Yep,
she goes, "You son of a bitch!"
Yeah.
You son of a bitch.
It's crazy that bit because it's like. He's just taking out Gray, who's an actual fighter. You're not going to really probably do that. So anyway,
she gets shot in the gut or something.
Yeah, and and the father as well, the one armed
father.
He has a crack.
Nam has got him pinned down with his crowbar.
Yeah,
and then his daughter comes up to stab him with the knife, but Nam doesn't want him killing him.
Yeah, so she knocks him away.
So he knocks her away, but that's okay because Curtis picks up the knife and shoves it in his side. And he passes out.
Yeah,
and we assume he's dead, but of course. He's too weird to die.
Yeah, he comes back later, so then they push on. Curtis, and then Timmy's mum is dying.
Yeah.
And with Curtis, he promises to find Timmy. It's kind of like a dying wish. And then they push on and they kind of then come into this party train. Suddenly, and everyone's partying, everyone's
like
drinking.
It's
like a nightclub, all mostly young people. A lot of people doing the Cronus, and that's what we get from Nam and his daughter. They kind of grab as much Cronus, and you have everyone going, "Hey, that's my Cronus!
Yeah, I'll kill you!
I'll kill you! There's a lot of that going on in the background.
And this is also the thing: is that 18 years of being on this train, and the pinnacle is a sushi chef and a nightclub train.
Yeah,
carriage.
Yes.
And there's people just sort of sitting around getting manicures,
Wasted.
pedicures, and there's people in the dining cart or the bar cart just sort of sitting around in their fancy gear. And
Well, again, like how many of those parties can you go to where it kind of becomes boring, doesn't it?
well, that's the thing. It's like
It's
they've got a nicer life, as it were,
yeah,
but they've probably got less motivation.
they do. They don't have much motivation.
Like they're just kind of. It's like reminds me of Wall-E.
Yeah,
You know, where they've been out
yeah,
on this cruise for so long, they've just become blobs in chairs.
yeah,
Yeah, so they get through the nightclub and grab all the chronol, and they get out. They enter this weird thing with a narrow bridge, and I think we were told earlier that over the narrow bridge is the last gate
yeah.
to the engine. And they go over there, and there's like this weird sort of
It's
grinding
the working
gears
part of
under
the
there,
train.
and
Yeah, yeah.
they're over on the other side, and before them is the final door to the engine. And this is where they have this confrontation where Curtis really wants this gate open, and Nam says, "No," and they have a bit of a fight. And then Curtis reveals the backstory.
Yeah, and he says, so 10,000 people got on the tail section.
10,000 or 1,000?
Yeah? No, 10,000. And the soldiers took everything off us.
Yeah.
So there was nothing left. We had nothing. And we had to, after a month, we ate the week,
Yeah.
which is pretty shocking, like suddenly to
Isn't
hear
it funny? He uses the term month and week,
Yeah.
but not day.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just found it was an interesting kind of almost poetic. You know, after a month, we ate the week.
And he says a great line, babies taste the best.
Yes. And that's what's my take on it.
This is what Chris Evans wanted to do, okay? He didn't want to be Captain America. He wanted to do a role that was a bit risky.
He was a bit
and he wanted
tortured.
to say, babies taste the best.
Yeah, and he relates this story about a knife-wielding man killing...
Four men.
Yeah, leading some men and killing a mum and taking a baby.
Which are going to
and they're
rip
going to
apart.
kill the baby, but then this old man comes up who's Gilliam and
Cuts
takes
his
the
arm.
baby, and they think, oh, he wants to kill the baby himself, but he cuts his own arm off and says, if you're so hungry, eat this.
And it was a turning point.
Yeah, and then suddenly everyone like wakes up out of their crazy
Panic.
panic.
Toilet
yeah.
paper panic.
There's a toilet paper panic. Here, if you want to wipe your bum so badly, use this. You know.
Yeah, that's right.
And that explains, of course, why it had been mentioned earlier, where he's talking about, you know, how can I be a leader when I've got two arms?
Yeah.
And you're going, what the hell?
Yes.
And you see this scar on his arm there, and you don't know, and you know that Gillen's missing an arm and a leg, and we find out that in fact it was a case that he couldn't even bring himself.
Yeah, people offered limbs for everyone
people
to
were
live.
giving up their arms and legs, and he couldn't
do it.
do it himself.
Yeah, he tried, but he couldn't do it.
But this is a lovely response back when Nam says, "Yeah, you and your gates, you're coming along. That's the gate I want to get through," and he points to the side door,
not
the exit.
the
And he says,
door
"You might
with-
take it as a wall, but I see it as a gate.
Yeah.
That's the only way we're going to get out of this. You know, it's that old thing. The only way to win is to not play."
Yeah.
And
Curtis doesn't really agree with that.
yeah,
still at
Curtis
this
says,
point.
you're gonna go out and die. You're crazy, old man. And he says, no, actually, when we crossed the bridge at New Year's, I looked down, and I've done this every year for past 10 years or something, and there's a crashed aeroplane down there. The first time was just the tip of the tail, and then a little bit more, and this time I looked down and you could see the whole body and the wings. And then he said, and when there's the snow is now the type of snow.
That's
because he's throwback to this Inuit woman telling him about snow and ice that's ready to melt. So, and we get a little flashback to this snowflake which came in through the bullet holes that Curtis put, and he sort of frosted past, and Nam took particular interest in this snowflake. And then finally, he sort of relates back to when he's walking through the garden carriage, and he looked out the window and he saw, but you won't believe me.
Yeah.
And I imagine at that point he's saying he saw like the polar bear, or penguins, or something alive out there.
Yeah.
And so even after this, Curtis is kind of like, I've really got to get in there.
And then he says about the Cronus.
Yeah, you and your bloody chrono. And he says, it's explosive. And he packs it up, sticks it on the door, sticks in a fuse, and says, give me the match and we'll light it. And the gate opens.
The woman in the yellow suit.
That woman, she just steps out and just
shoots him.
Nam. Nam falls over. He's not dead, but he's wounded.
And she measures the Cronus.
Yeah, she measures it. and
Which is weird.
takes it off the door.
Yeah.
And then walks back inside and invites Curtis in. And we finally meet Wilfred.
Ed Harris.
Ed Harris, yes.
Who they really upped his sound, I found, in this, like his voice. He's a great actor. He's been in lots of, big Hollywood movies.
Particularly as a military guy.
And, military guy has been a thing because he's got that voice and that look, I think.
Yeah.
But, and recently in the Sci-Fi Westworld, he's the main character in that. He's a bad guy. And he plays that really well. And I think in this, it was probably a bit, a little bit stock standard bad guy. I'm doing this for the greater good and, someone has to play this role and all that sort of stuff. But, yeah, they upped the ante of his voice, definitely. So he meets Wilfred and he tells him all about the balance on the train again and that the other head table is basically, like this fact of being the top and that people need to be executed for the balance of the train. How many people did you take out? You took out more people than we expected. He tells him about, like, you were a really interesting story plot, the fact that you did the flame. We weren't expecting that.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
Yeah. He also says that him and Gillen were, like, actually friends and used to have long conversations, long phone calls every
Curtis
night.
doesn't really believe in that until...
No, I struggled to believe it too,
until he points out... Well, he does a couple of things. One, he rings the egghead dude to confirm numbers.
Yeah.
And... it's like there's a phone revealed in the tail section.
Yeah.
So you're going, okay, that's fine. But then the thing that gets you is when he reveals that he handed back the little pellets. And also he says, and Gillen was always right, you do need 2 arms to hold a woman.
Yeah.
Which is something that Gillen had said.
Yeah.
So which meant that there was listening, there was some sort of communication.
Yeah. But none of this is really, and he tells him to execute Egghead, doesn't he? He tells the Egghead to execute them all.
Yeah.
What's the number? 74%? Okay. And he executes them. And he says to him, he has a steak and they're kind of, he doesn't eat it, but he sort of, Wilfred enjoys his steak, but he takes him into the engine. And it's this big circular, revolving, metallic machine thing going round and round and round. And he sort of, this is where Curtis is kind of like trancing out a bit, isn't he? He's a bit confused by everything.
As I said, you've never been alone before.
You've never been alone. And he gives him that moment in time to just be alone with his thoughts, Everything he's just gone through, executing Mason, losing Egner, fighting his way through it all, not being a leader, but then being a leader, It's a lot he's gone through, Surrey, in this hour and a half.
Yeah, and he collapses to the ground, has a bit of a cry.
Yeah, has a little bit of a cry. He says to him, you will take the train and you must keep her humming. Everything adds up. Humanity. Everything on this train is humanity.
Yeah. And it makes a certain sense, really, when you look at it. If you were to assume, and this is that thing that Nam said, if you would assume that they are walls and that you're in the train, then, it's got to be sort of the way it doesn't have to be in the class system, but you do have to maintain some way of maintaining an order and a balance.
And that goes back to you saying the environment. Like, we are on Earth. We're approaching 7 billion people. We're environmentally destroying Earth. Maybe we need some sort of balance. I'm not saying kill humans, but
we're not saying let's turn people into cockroach.
No. But I'm just saying that, maybe we are out of balance right now, and we need to create some sort of balance. So that again, that's what you can see the flaw in this argument, of course, when Wilfred is saying all this as an audience member. But it is a comment on our society, isn't it? Like that idea of maybe we are out of balance.
I think it is an absolute truth. It was the second law of thermodynamics that entropy increases. So you're going to end up, you have to add something in or make some balancing action on a system, or it will fall apart.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's any mandate on what that action has to be. It doesn't have to be one-child policies or massacres or any other sort of
or
oddity.
Biological viruses.
Or zombie apocalypses, but you need to have some sort of balance on all this.
You do.
Or you
So-
need to get out of the system.
You do. So while this has all happened, Curtis is kind of, he's lost his drive. And meanwhile, Nam and his daughter are kind of like, regathering. And with that, back on their bridge, the party people have come for the Cronus, ready to kill him. And
The first dude gets knocked over the rails.
he does, but you got to remember he's been shot, Nam, so he's a tough cookie here, isn't he? He's like fighting them one at a time on the bridge. And then the hitman freaking bloody comes back around, doesn't he? And suddenly it's a real fight. So they're fighting, and he tells them to go and get the matches from Curtis. Tells Yona to go get the matches from Curtis. So she runs in, and he says no. Not giving them to you, because now you feel like maybe he's been swayed over to Wilfred's side, that he's going to now be Wilfred. And she starts forking the floor, and she opens this tile, and underneath the engine, there's little Timmy.
Little Timmy.
He's down there like pulling soot out of a machine, out of the engine.
Well, his hand action. He's doing that thing. He reaches in, turns it out,
pulls out,
reaches off to the other side, pulls it out.
Yeah, and he's pulling the soot out. And this is where Wilfred quickly closes it up and says, well, you know what? The engine's going to last forever, but there's parts that have become extinct again.
Extinct. They keep saying
keep saying that, don't they? So there's animals, there's people, there's things on the train that have become extinct, and we've got to keep everything in balance.
And this, I think this is one of these beautiful things that, like,
there's a
feeding
hypocrisy.
the children to the machine to keep society running.
Yeah.
And if that's not some sort of heavy, deep-ass commentary on class systems or capitalism, where it's like, the machinery that keeps humanity alive must be fed the sacrifice of the children of the poor.
Yeah, it's pretty evil. Suddenly it's evil.
Yeah,
it's a
and
good
suddenly you
clicker.
go, oh, okay. And I think Curtis
He
gives him a
snaps
good
out of it. Yeah,
good
it's a
old
good snapping.
punch in the face and
punches
pulls the
in
tile up, and this is finally he gets to sacrifice his arm.
Yeah, he finally sticks his arm into the machine.
This is
He's
why
trying to
he
be-
had his arm left.
Yes.
Sticks it in, and pulls little Timmy out, and Gus gets the matches.
Yep. He's trying to pull him out, and while he's doing that, he gives Yono the mattress. The matches, sorry, not mattress. And while he's doing that, the other boy, the
crawls
guy
out
that
of the little-
crawls out because the train's not happy because everything's kind of coming to a halting stop, crawls out and just very robotically goes up into like a position and goes back into the engine.
Some position where he starts doing something.
Yeah, and the engine kind of gets
swallows
sucked back in to turn back on, I guess. Meanwhile, Nang is kind of having this battle. Yono goes, she lights the fuse. I think Nan just wins the battle, doesn't he? And he does.
Yeah.
No, he wins the battle. She's lit the fuse. She runs out. Curtis has pulled the boy up, but in doing so, he's cracked his arm off. He's snapped his arm off. So he's lost an arm, which was his ultimate sacrifice.
Now he can't hold a woman.
So now he can't hold a woman, but he can hold the Yona and the little child to protect them as the bomb goes off.
Yeah, because they couldn't close the door.
And we have this amazing moment, don't we, where like the bomb goes off, but they decided not to just have the train kind of disintegrate, but then it's like an avalanche in the mountains, isn't it? First, it's like the sound and the explosion creates that more than the train just...
And the front breaks free.
Yeah.
It gets into a tunnel, so the avalanche sort of knocks out the tail section, and then
bits just go flamming in all sorts of aspects.
It's not, and you hear the screaming of the people on the carriages.
Yeah. Because some carriages then get bowled over, and so they're like being tossed down this mountain by the snow. Other carriages kind of get tripped up in the tunnel, I guess, like crunched and munched and in this tunnel. And then the train at the front bit kind of goes flambling off into the mountainside, off the tracks.
And is this not some comment about revolutions, over the corpses of the commoners? I don't know. Yeah. It's something that it's all very revolutionary.
Yeah.
It's like it would have been
everyone died basically.
It would have been easy to have most of the people survive, and have multiple people coming out of the wreckage to look at the new world.
Yeah.
But instead it's like, no, the old society has been washed away.
Yeah.
They've all died screaming in their own, decrepit state.
They have. And so then we just have Yono kind of, she does scream for her father, but he's done. I think he's cooked. And so is Curtis. And she exits with the boy, Timmy. I think that is Timmy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's Timmy.
Yeah, Timmy. And they go out into the mountains, and you can see the wreckage. You can see they're high up in these mountains, and it's pretty.
They could have chosen
isolated.
someplace closer to the equator.
Yeah, I know, somewhere where it's a bit lower to the,
But
And then she sees a polar bear.
Polar bear, and there's hope.
There is hope in the polar bear.
Like I said, that's a bit of a frightening thing to see. But if it's alive, it's a predator, right?
Yeah.
In order for a predator to be alive and look healthy like there must be a lot of prey.
Yeah.
Because one predator needs quite a lot of prey in order to survive. That's
exactly
an
right.
ecosystem balance right there.
So there's a balance.
Yes.
Back to that. And credits. That is the end of Snowpiercer.
Yes, indeed. And it could well be the start of a Snowpiercer TV series.
Well, it could be, couldn't it? It could really flow on from
they've, Netflix. It's coming.
So how did that make you feel overall, Surrey? What was your viewing experience of that like? Was this the first time you'd seen it? Or
no, this is the second time. So
me too.
I saw it years ago when it was sort of... I
Maybe
don't think it actually
out.
got into the cinemas here in Australia.
Yeah, I don't know.
I watched it via an alternative acquisition mode.
Oh my goodness. How dare you.
Yeah.
Poor Bong Joon-ho.
He's gone on to win lots of awards and things with his in fact, Parasite's on Netflix. I was going to watch that because it's won a bunch of awards. It's pretty good.
Including the Oscar, eh?
And Snowpiercer is great. I have a feeling it has the opportunity to being a bit of a cult classic. Because,
I think so.
Because it's really... It's kind of interesting and innovative in the way it's presented. It's got a very dark side to it, but also the glimmering light of, human spirit, which, breaks out at the end.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very good. I watched it here at home on my brand new 27-inch monitor. So it's crystal clear and sharp, and it's really good with some my audio editing headphones on.
Yeah.
And it was great. The first time I watched it, I'm watching it with my wife out on the lounge on the TV, and we were surprised because we didn't reading the blurb. A train traveling the world, never ending. It sort of sounds shonky.
Yes.
Like it could easily have been a rather poor showing, but I saw the actors involved. And I thought, oh no. We've got some names that they must have spent a bit of money, a bit of effort. They're not going to just jump into. They're not Nicolas Cage.
Yeah,
he'll do anything.
Hey, Nicolas Cage, he has his place. Come on.
And he's got some good films, but he's also got some dreadful ones. Real shockers. But and that's what he's renowned for.
Yeah,
he's prolific, and so that means he's got good films and not so good films. Yeah, we won't go into that.
I a bit like you. I got to see this. I didn't see it at the movies, but I saw it on TV, or somehow via TV. But it was legal. I know it was legal. I think I might have paid for it on TV or whatever. But I found at the time, and it's interesting because if you kind of Google this movie, look at some of the reviews of this movie, I think you do get that sense that if you go into this movie expecting it to be reasonable in logic, you're then not seeing the beauty of this film. Yeah. And I agree, as well. I remember going in the first time watching this movie thinking, a train that goes around the world, it's not very, I don't know why, but you kind of, we've watched a whole bunch of movies, you kind of go the Beyond, alien interact, but I don't know, it seems more believable where you read this and you think, at the end of the world, there's a train that goes around the world non-stop 20 years after the end of the world, and the only people left are on that train. How does the train keep there's a lot of questions, a lot of logical, rational questions. And I think, again, I don't read a lot of the times into critics and reviews anyway, but I feel that people can judge this film story really quickly. And if you do that and you think it's supposed to be completely plausible, you're going to miss the beauty of this film, because it's just really like you've got to buy into that, and if you buy into that in that first 5 or 10 minutes, you then see some pretty magical stuff in this.
It's one of those films where you're given a premise and say, this is the starting position.
Yeah.
Accept it.
Yeah.
Now we're going to tell you a story.
Yeah. And the story's fabulous, but you've got to buy into that that premise.
Because a lot of stories, it's very popular to have essentially origin stories.
Yeah.
Where it would be the build up and all the rest of it, and then they get saved by being on the train.
Yeah, that's right.
Or, I'm trying to think of some of these other ones, like where that's, I can't remember nothing else. But it's the same thing where you often have like an origin story, and this one is just sort of saying, look, just accept it. Now we're going to tell you what happens after that. Yeah,
and we're like, I think that's the thing. You could look at some of these characters, like even Curtis, and you could look at Mason and Wilfred, and you could go, these are not people. Like, this is cartoonish versions of people. But in this world, it makes sense that these people exist. Like you've had Curtis. If you think about Curtis, basically his story is he went on the train when he's 17.
Yeah.
And it's this vicious environment where he literally is stabbing and killing people to live and eating babies.
But he was asked, what was the world like before?
Yeah, and he's like, I don't want to remember.
I don't want to.
I don't want to remember. Yeah. And so like you take someone like Mason, who's like religiously devoted to Wilfred. And then even when you get to Wilfred, he makes a lot of logical, argumentative sense. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but you're agreeing to just like kill people, cull people.
It makes sense if you accept his base premise.
Yeah.
If you accept his base premise that the train is necessary and the way it is run is necessary, then because wouldn't it have been better almost just to cut off the tail people altogether?
Yeah.
And then treat everyone because then you'd have so many more resources, treat everyone at a higher level.
Yeah.
But then again, maybe it's just the point though that the train is so limited anyway. Even the people in the first classes, they were still prisoners.
Yeah.
Like, sure, they had nicer things. It was cleaner. They didn't have to.
And Wilfred does say that, doesn't
kill
he?
people. But they're still, as you saw, they're in a sauna or they're sitting at a restaurant bar, or because their sleep carriages were just like little capsules.
Yeah.
Or they're in a nightclub having drugs,
I think you need the townspeople, like that's what he says, you need the townspeople to have these moments of revolts to justify the wealthier people kind of having their existence. You know what I mean?
And
like
this is that 1984.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's like, because like the wealthy people in the sauna, you need a villain. You need a villain. And the townspeople are the villain. And that's the idea of the kids in the school. Like, Wilfred is our savior and the townspeople are the evil people. You know what I mean? Like, and Wilfred does everything he can to keep us safe. If you had no evil people, eventually humans are going to go, what the fuck? Like, what do we do?
Yeah, why do we treat these people badly?
Yeah. So you need some bad people. You need villains,
Yes.
It's almost commenting on film, like on story, like saying you need the people to go boo, hiss, like.
Yeah. And that
like,
is one of the points made in 1984, going back to that, is that they're constantly at war so that they can justify
the security measures.
Yeah, security measures, and also to ensure that nobody looks too much upwards. Yeah, and that's...
It's so horrible, isn't it?
I know, and then when you start looking at stuff that's actually going on, and stuff that people say, oh, camera's watching us, oh, it's so Big Brother, and you go, that's not Big Brother.
No, that's not Big Brother.
Being watched is not Big Brother.
But maybe it is a step towards Big Brother.
Big Brother is all of the other stuff that's going on that you don't know about.
So I did really think this was cool. I enjoyed watching the second time, and I enjoyed the violence mixed with comedy, mixed with a pretty strong message. And I think if you accept that premise at the start, which I think everyone should, give this film a crack.
Well, it's like that movie, The Lobster.
Yeah, that's right. You accept the premise.
You don't
and
find
you're on
out
for a ride.
How the lobster scenario. And if you hadn't seen The Lobster, it's one of our
second episode.
It's our second episode, and it's one of our highest rated films.
It's still up there for me.
And you've got to watch it because it just starts with a premise. It just starts with a premise which is just, if you're a single adult, you have 30 days to find a partner or you get turned into an animal. Like, that's just the premise.
And when you said it like that, it sounds stupid.
Yeah,
but when you watch the movie, you're like, this is fucking incredible.
But it's just exactly like this. You accept that is the world that it is.
That's the premise.
Doesn't matter how it got to be like that.
No,
it just is.
that's the world.
Now look at the story that comes out of it, and it's good. And it's the same with this one,
Yeah,
So
you accept that.
good.
You accept that premise. You're good. So where that fits on the ladder for me, this kind of, I think the last couple of episodes, I've maybe been around the bottom rungs, whereas this one goes right up there for me. I'm putting it into the third rung from the top. It's slotting in there very nicely. And I just think that, as I said, just on that previous point, that if you accept that premise, it takes you on a cool ride. Like, it's violent, it's funny, and it's still, it really does, again, reveal humanity in a particular way.
Yeah, I agree. It's right up there. I've got it fourth up there. It's just below The Lobster, just above Passengers.
Yeah.
It's just it's not as smoothly written, I suppose, as like Oblivion. Oblivion had that really
Oblivion was cool.
It's amazing flow.
Yeah,
through
it did, didn't it?
But Snowpiercer, it's such a worthy movie to watch.
It is.
You get a lot out of it. It's great.
So what was favourite scene of yours, Surrey?
Favourite scene was Mason's shoe, hat, foot, head speech.
So good.
Combined, so for the ridiculousness of the speech and her, I suppose, speaking in sort of axiomatic tautology, I guess you'd call it. A shoe doesn't go on the head; it goes on the foot. You are the foot. We are the head. We are the top. You are the bottom. That's the way it has to be. And it just sort of it's circular, as if it's just the obvious truth, but none of it actually makes any sense because, of course, you can put a shoe on your head. Like, we design shoes.
Yeah.
We could make a shoe that also works as a hat if we so chose.
Yeah.
Which is the case with classes and structures. We could design a class system or a social structure which is circular or is level. It's just...
Yeah.
But you combine that then with the way she... those hand actions and the way it really focused on them so that it drew your attention and you went, oh...
You couldn't avoid them.
And those sort of hand actions came up again in the school when the kids were doing their little weird sort of gestures and to infinity and beyond or whatever it is, where they do the arms in the air. And then later on when the Wilfred is talking in the engine, he likewise does these hand actions when the kid's revealed, because then the kid's doing it to get the gook out of the gummed up engine parts. And so that opening bit, it really highlighted also, it shows this ridiculous privilege she's speaking from.
Mm-hmm.
Because clearly, she's all clean. She's wearing a nice white thing and she's manicured and made up. And then she's telling them how they all should be there. And that's the way it's supposed to be. And you go, and I think later on Curtis says to Wilfred, he says, that's what people in power tell the people who aren't.
Yeah.
That there's a natural order to things.
Yeah.
Well, of course you're going to say that because you're at the top.
Yeah.
Isn't that convenient? And that's always the whole greater good.
Yeah.
Whenever anyone says, I'm doing this for the greater good, it's always convenient that they're part of that greater part of the good.
Mm.
You must sacrifice yourself for the greater good.
Because you're in the greater
Is it,
good.
well, you're saying that because you're the greater good, not me.
Yeah.
How about we swap that around? No? Okay. It's strange.
That's all right.
So that scene there, I think, was about my favourite. Although a close runner-up is the conversation that Nam and Curtis have at the end about what the horrors were in the tail section, and then just that line about you see walls, I see a gate. I like that analogy there where people feel trapped in their social structure.
Yep.
But what if you just turn left and kick your way through that way?
Yeah, blow up that way.
Why try to get up to the top? The top's not really where you want to be.
Yeah, and I mean, even the analogy there works, doesn't it? Because, like, we are told, we're all told, if you go outside the train, you will freeze to death.
Yes.
So again, like the fear, you're exactly right. Like, keep going forwards gets you to the top of society. But how about trying to go sideways? But society tells you if you go sideways, you will freeze to death. So you'll fail. You'll fail if you go sideways. The only way to the top is this way. But then the top, even in the train, has a ceiling. Like, even when he gets there, Wilford says, do you think, it's all rosy up here? I'm on my own. And, Curtis sort of says back to him, oh, yeah, sure, you've got all this space. Like, in the tail, we were all on top of each other and you're eating steaks. Like, doesn't sound that bad to me. But he's also right that the top isn't all roses. He's on his own and he doesn't have the ability to do stuff. So it's a good analogy that Nam says to him, break free, go sideways. But that's a good way of saying with society, isn't it? It's like, this is the way to the top, like you and me. This is the way to the top of podcasting. This is the way to the top of that. Well, why don't you try something totally bizarre off here on the left?
I don't know that anyone's ever said podcasting is the way to the top.
No, the top of podcasting.
Oh, the top of podcasting.
We could be the number one podcast in the world, couldn't we? Space Brains?
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. So there's probably a traditional route to make your podcast the number one podcast in the world. But why don't we try something sideways,
Yes.
Break through the gate on the right.
A podcast of only farting.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, that's probably
try it.
already been tried and it hasn't worked. So let's move on from that one.
That's right. I loved those scenes for those same reasons. I mean, as I said before, I loved Mason, Tilda Swinton. This is just, it's one of those roles. Like, it's one of those roles, isn't it? But I loved the tunnel. I think that whole sequence, because when I watched this the first time, I remember going away and probably telling a couple of mates that this film's cool and this scene where the tunnel happened, like telling people about the tunnel. Because I just thought that tunnel idea was really a cool idea. That they thought, you kind of expected them to go through segment after segment of the train and seeing rich people, etc. But they get to that point where it's just this bunch of soldiers, like it was a real driving violent force. And when you think about a story like this probably being relatable very much in propaganda or in communist society, Nazism, like the way Nazis run, you're going to hit the room that's full of people with axes. Like, if you want to try to get through this society, you're going to unfortunately have to break the room that has the guys with the ski masks.
The sad thing, of course, is that room was really early on. And a lot of people discover this in trying to raise themselves up. It's often
or
not...
an issue, like you want to raise an issue.
It's often not necessarily the people at the top who give the most objection.
No. It's kind of the people right above you.
It's usually the people who are just around you and just above you who themselves... Because really, all those soldiers, they had enough... They could have just turned around and gone, well, why don't we go to the top classes? There's enough of them to do it. They could have just had a military crew and just... They were the enforcement. No one could have stopped them.
No.
But if they suspected... They couldn't allow that thought to be real...
No.
So they had to stop anyone else from rebelling because they weren't rebelling.
Yeah.
It's like, no, your rebellion can't work. We're going to have to crush you.
Yeah, because it wouldn't work for us.
That's if that works for you, then
we could do it.
Spending the last 18 years not doing it, and we should have, because let's face it, the guards' quarters were only a step up. From the bottom there. Yeah, I think they had some proper food, and they had their own sort of bunks and things. And they had water.
That's why you get that. And it happened in this with the guards when they were doing it. They were just like, just get in line. Like, they were just kind of doing their job. Like, they weren't getting that much benefit out of it, you know? No. Unlike the people eating sushi and stuff.
Yeah, or dentistry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
her teeth, sorry.
Yes.
And she even takes them out.
I'm not even sure why she did that.
No, I don't know either. But
just to generate sympathy, I suppose.
Yeah, it'd be a really good question. It'd be great to get Tilda Swinton, on the phone.
Tilda, yeah.
And so if you're out there, let us know, like, Was that something in the script, or was that something that she kind of, did in the
to try and
moment?
make her character a bit more pathetic?
Yeah, because she was kind of surrendering, wasn't she, in that moment? So, what about the science in the space brain?
Oh my god, no!
Finally, I've been waiting to talk about chemtrails.
No, geoengineering.
The train that never stops?
No, geoengineering. This is what they did for global warming. So they sprayed crap up in the atmosphere to cool the planet, and it overcooled. This is not a
science
theory that was thought of just for this film. This is genuine ideas put forward. What can we do to quickly change things? And the reason for that, of course, is the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere holds onto heat, and it heats up the land and the water as well. Mm-hmm. So even if we were to suck out all of the excess carbon dioxide and push back to, say, pre-industrial levels, like, say, 1600s or 1500s, it would still take like 100 years or something for the heat to dissipate out of the ground.
Right.
Because we've got the waters have heated up, the ground is heated up, and we're still being hit by sun.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be a quick thing. But what if you went and did what they did in this place and sprayed, did something to actually stop infrared light hitting the Earth in the first place, and a few other things, and you could very quickly then, because you take out the solar radiation that's hitting our planet constantly, then all the heat can just go out of the place. In fact, there was one idea put forward, which is it's an actual technology being developed, which are reverse solar panels.
Oh yeah.
And I think I've spoke a bit about this before. So this was there's carbon nanotubes or graphene, which is in a particular arrangement that infrared photons, can travel in only one direction.
Yeah.
And so heat hits on one side, and then the photons come out at a different wavelength out the other side.
Okay.
So you put them in at night time. You have a black surface facing the night sky, which provides basically a low photon pressure.
Right.
And you've got relatively warm ground underneath it, which has positive photons.
Okay.
So there's more heat leaving the Earth than is above.
Yep.
And they go through this medium, which is basically a reverse solar panel, and generates electricity at night time.
Okay.
The idea, of course, then if you had enough of this actually causes a cooling effect, because you're sucking the heat out of the Earth and turning it into electricity and piping it somewhere else to do mechanical work or something.
Okay.
So that's sort of one thing, but obviously you'd need to cover the whole Earth in that. But what if you did a few of these following things? One of them would be spraying nanoparticles high up in the stratosphere, which would reflect light. So that's reflective aerosols. So you do that up about 20 kilometers up in the air, which you might spread by aeroplanes, high altitude aeroplanes spraying it out, which is what they sort of showed at the start of the film there. Then you've also got the idea of mirrors. So there's been various ideas of having a big mirror in space to reflect more sunlight down onto cold areas of Russia to allow for longer summer growing periods.
Yeah. Because
there's big sections, like Russia's got a lot of land, most of it those frozen tundra. And so I think, well, hey, chuck a mirror up and the full moon and reflect more light down, and we get longer summer period.
I think the Simpsons have done a joke about that, haven't
they? They did the reverse, where they put a big shade.
That's right, the shade.
So
Mr.
everyone had to
Burns
use
put a
more
shade.
power. Of course, that sounds like a dreadful idea, because I'm pretty sure you'd be killing a whole lot of animals in life, and there'd be
gardens.
God knows what they would go on there. So they haven't really done it. But so your giant mirror in orbit, because the idea is that if you were to hold a mirror above your head, you'd only create a tiny little shady patch. But the closer you put that mirror to the sun, the bigger the shade that would be cast. So the idea is you put about 400 kilometers up in an orbit, have some mirrors, which would reflect some of the sunlight away. Again, it's a bit disastrous because we rely on sunlight for plants and everything. But still, it would do something. Somewhat easier, somewhat better idea would be to get rid of low-lying clouds, because low-lying clouds trap heat and create more high-level clouds because they reflect sunlight.
Yep.
In fact, there's I say they look after the September 11 attacks on the trade centers.
Okay.
They grounded all flights.
Yep.
So there were no aeroplanes flying over LA, and LA is like the LAX is one of the busiest hubs in the universe for human-based transport. You take
Not just the universe.
You can take that to the bank.
Yeah.
There's not another planet in the solar system that has as much traffic.
For humans.
Yes, for humans. So, all those contrails, not chemtrails, which are, turbulence, because Los Angeles has fairly humid weather.
Yep.
You get a lot of airplanes shooting through there. You get turbulence. It forms water particles, artificial clouds. So when they grounded all the airplanes, they had sufficiently less clouds that there was a warming effect.
All right.
Because it was brighter on the ground, and there's a warming. It's actually measurable in the average temperatures during that 3-day period, which is quite fascinating. And so then they, this is a bit of an eye-opener. It was like, well, hold on, what total effect is our air traffic having in terms of changing weather patterns? And so there's study going into that, because you always need supercomputers to crunch around that forever. But the idea is, if you could artificially seed high-layer clouds, they'd reflect light, and get rid of the low-lying clouds, which hold heat in, then you could very quickly, change what they call the albedo, which is the amount of reflection and refraction from space.
Yeah, right.
And
So I wonder if the coronavirus is probably not a bad idea right now for scientists to check, because flights might drop away. Seeing our tourism is dropping away and these international bans and stuff.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. We're not probably quite there yet, but maybe in a month or something.
Well, another interesting thing will be all other epidemic viruses. So flu.
Yeah.
The flu season is coming up.
Yeah, for Australia.
Yeah. But leading into that, everyone's got this heightened awareness of hygiene and self-restriction and travel and groups. I'm wondering, because last year we had quite a rough flu season.
We did. We
lost hundreds of people died.
We did.
Which is quite unfortunate. I think 1 month there were 65 people died in 1 month.
Yeah, which is very high.
Which is very high when you consider all other diseases that we're sort of getting rid of. We can't get rid of the flu. But it'll be interesting to see, again, the same sort of thing. We're going to have this knock-on effect where for maybe a month here in Australia, we're going to be very sensitive to contagion issues. People are...
Well, we're going to force
people are doing what
isolation.
they're supposed to be doing, which is say they feel a bit of a tickle in their throat, and then maybe they're coughing a bit or sneezing a bit. They don't go to work, which is what you're supposed to do. So everyone out there, don't stop doing that just because the pandemic is declared over.
And I'm going to, as you know, as well as a father of a couple little kids, and it's going to be the same for me, is that if we're not there yet in Australia, but it probably will happen. But if they close the schools for an extended period, like a month, during like more the winter period, and then and there's an isolation being enforced where we're more forced to stay at home as a society and isolate ourselves from other humans, whether there will be a major knock-on effect of like the flu and common cold.
Yeah, so this
like
sort
less. Yeah,
but I mean, this is going to geoengineering.
Yeah, sorry.
Sort of topics. Yeah, we're going off.
We're going off to biological.
It's really interesting, and maybe we should do one of these outbreak movies or.
We should, I reckon. Yeah,
that'd be great. But yeah, so there's genuinely these theories these ideas have been put forward. The science has been worked through to try and figure them out, to see what sort of effect that have. Even down to things like painting rooftops.
Yeah.
A light color.
Yep.
And there's also this question: if you get, in fact, one of the ways that solar panel uptake is measured here in Australia is to take aerial photographs.
Yep.
And look at the reflectivity of the rooftops.
Yeah. Right.
So you take a photograph of a suburb at one point in time, and then later on you take another photograph of the same suburb. And then because you can't really, it's difficult to sort of match up houses and count individual solar panels. But what you can do is do a bit of color manipulation, some filters on that to find the highlights and reflective points. and count those.
Yeah,
because
right.
solar panels are glass, they're reflective. And so when you start sticking a whole lot of solar panels on houses,
You'll see
you
that
change the reflectiveness of all the roofs.
Yeah.
And there's other ideas of growing crops that are more reflective. Lighter coloured crops, which sounds funny, but when you realise how many millions of hectares of cropland is covered year in, year out by crops, if you just change their reflectivity, that increase their albedo just by a small amount, then you'd be reflecting a whole lot more light, which normally would be absorbed by the ground.
Sure would. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Volcanoes do this all the time. We had a cooling. Okay, so we know that after the Mount Pinatubo eruption in 1991, there was a global cooling of about half a degree or two for 3 years afterwards. So, this is where these ideas come from. It's like, that's a volcano. And, when Iceland had their... I can't even say the word. Any Icelandics out there want to tell us how to pronounce that volcano? Again, likewise, they had a colder winter through Europe because there's lots of stuff in the air. Yeah, so it's very interesting. It has pretty much been determined by all scientists and engineers that even if these things were economically feasible, the risk of there being unknown consequences, unknown side effects, too high.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, you go and CW7 in this movie is exactly the fear is that you go and stick a whole bunch of crap up in the atmosphere. What if it's super effective? And then we get a chilling effect, which is just as bad as a runaway heating effect.
Yeah.
Or what if it has no effect, but it rains poison on us?
Yeah, that's right.
There's no sort of good scenario that there's no way of figuring out the perfect amount to put into the atmosphere to get just the right amount of reflection.
Well, even when you were doing your explanation, it really reminded me of them coming to Australia and unleashing the cane toad, and the rabbit, like these sort of things that they thought were good ideas, and then they were just terrible ideas, and science backed it at the time. I believe in those sort of answers. The science at the time backed it, and then it's just created this monster of a natural disaster, So as soon as you start saying we're going to put something up in the sky, you do think, what damage will that do?
Something
to
that we
us?
can't easily clean up again. Same, we're going to drop a bunch of cane toads off.
Yeah.
We can't pick them up again.
No.
But it was that Simpsons episode, isn't it? Where they what's running around? There's snakes getting about, or a couple of lizards getting about. Oh, we'll use the Chinese needle snakes to kill them, and then we'll get the gorillas. We'll smash the snakes, and then we just wait till winter, and that'll kill the gorillas off.
That's right. Yeah.
That's wishful thinking.
And even when they do come to Australia at the end, what is it, Bart unleashes something and it multiplies, and then he's kind of like. At the end when he's escaping Australia in the helicopter, he's like, haha, and then there's the koala bear, it's like, what will the koala bear do?
The funny thing is in California, they have outbreaks of eucalyptus.
Yeah.
Because they went, okay, well, eucalyptus is very drought tolerant. California, parts of California are very similar to Australia in climate. Yep. We'll take these eucalypts because they form these great windbreaks for farmers. Yeah. And they don't need watering and they're very tough. Unfortunately, however, there's some slight differences to California, and they've grown out of control because they don't have the natural controls we have in Australia. Yeah. Our soils are a bit poorer, so the trees don't grow as well, for example. We've got sort of bugs and mites, and we have a different level of heating and drying and burning that happens. And so, they have these out of control... logical, pest species, which is the gum tree. Yeah.
So, look, I think we've covered the movie pretty well. Look, normally I'd go into a bit of detail, but I'm also aware of the timing here. So, we have talked a fair bit about the cinematography playing a role. It was nice and tight and technical in this film. Again, Bong Joon-ho, I saw the thing he's big on storyboards. And in fact, for this, he was doing storyboards, and John Hurt said to him, I love your storyboards. It's very very much like Hitchcock, like it's reminding me of Hitchcock's level of detail.
Interesting enough, it did come from a graphic novel.
Yeah.
Which is essentially storyboards.
Yeah. So, and in that little clip, it's available on IMDb, that little bit about Snowpiercer. You saw a few of the storyboards. They are extremely detailed. So I think that's a really great part. And you can see this. I think for me, probably in terms of the technicalities, symbols are a big one. So we've talked a lot about these themes. The train's a perfect example of like each carriage can be a compartmentalized, and that can represent a part of society. And I think we see that, the tail section, filthy, grimy, compacted, too many people, but it's kind of almost like a little snippet of society, isn't it? There's children being born, there is the natural element, there's people coming together, there's friendships. Once you move throughout the rest of the train, there's not really those things, is there? The people partying up the front, they're all like beyond just partying, aren't they? They're all like sharing the bottles, doing the drugs, half naked, not really with anyone. It's not like they're couples or anything like that, Like it's the opposite extreme of relationships and stuff like that, yeah. So I think the signs and the symbols are very clear in this film. And then you can even take like the snow is frozen, we're stuck, whereas then, as he's saying, if we break free, the snow is crumbling, like the society is crumbling.
But also the snow is the white, and it's fresh, it's covering everything.
Yeah, it's clean.
You can't see any ugliness out there. It's all covered. Even the frozen dead people are 7.
Yeah.
You can't see people, they're just sort of these white shapes.
Yeah. And that was another thing, even the plane, when he spoke about the plane, seeing the plane, it's hard to see.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he decided to show us a very clean cut of that. We saw this, like really long shot looking down at where the plane was on the ridge, and you have to look closely to even see the plane.
Yeah.
So again, it's not giving away everything to us. So I thought that was really, really cool. So we'll move from that really quickly tonight. So let us know what you thought about Snowpiercer. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. We've got an Oscar award-winning Korean filmmaker here in the making back in these days in 2013. And then a few years later, he's come out with Parasite, and it's a film that we all should be checking out, I think, in the film world.
I will be having a look at that. I've been meaning to. I've got a long list of
we all have a long list
to watch, yeah.
But yeah, definitely check out Snowpiercer. Also, Chris Evans plays a different type of, hero in a way. This is a bit more of an anti-hero. He doesn't want to be the leader, and then he is the leader. And he kind of, sacrifices himself. So it's a different type of role for, the big American hero. Tilda Swinton, this is just a role that's, it's one of those roles that you can't say no to, I think, as an actor. And it's something that you have to check out. So it's a well worth film, this one. And if you get, as we said before, just push past that initial premise, accept it, and it will be a wonderful train ride.
It will be. And there is a Netflix series coming out for it.
Oh, okay.
So it does have the and Tim.
Okay.
But there are other people. It's sort of, there's been hinted on where these other people come from, that there's actually another train, or like a disconnected set of carriages or something along those lines.
All right, okay, interesting.
So, we'll see how that goes.
Definitely. And so, what is our next film, Surrey?
Our next film is The Thing.
The Thing. So the remake
this
version?
Is the 2016, I think it is.
Okay, yeah, so it's a more modern version.
Are you agreeing with me, or are you saying yes?
I'm saying yes, just as in yes. I can't look it up, but yeah, we'll go for it.
It is the newer one. Version. So there's the original.
It stars Joel Edgerton in it.
Joel Edgerton.
Yeah, the Aussie actor. And I think it is a couple of years ago, yeah.
Yeah, there was the original John Carpenter, which you should also have seen if you haven't. It's well worth it. And there's even an earlier Hammer House of Horror similar one, which I can't remember what it's called, but it's a similar one where they find an alien in the
yeah.
But anyway, so we're watching The Thing. The newer one, we'll see what that's all about. I haven't seen this version. I've seen
either have I.
The original several times.
So we'll go in cold and hopeful that it's going to take us on a cool little ride.
Yes.
So check it out before our next episode. And that is it for tonight's episode, Snowpiercer.
Snowpiercer.
Let us know what you think about it on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
At Space Brains Pod and Space Brains Podcast.
Pretty much. Hit us up.
You'll
Let
find
us
us.
know.
See
You
ya.
will find us. Bye-bye.